Yes, okay, so there's been a lot of hullabaloo and talk about the House of Representatives in America over the past week as the struggle for Speaker went on and on and on, much further beyond any time scale that anybody expected it to be, after it came down to 15 separate goes of voting.
15.
15 separate goes round. So
I love that on the 14th he was like, no, I'm still going to try.
Yeah, well, that's what you got to do. Well, I had to do a lot of looking into what the actual process is,
Right.
and other such things, so that I could wrap my head around it, so I could just not be talking out my arse for this segment.
Yeah.
And Americans, if you're watching and I end up doing that anyway, I'm sorry. Please correct me down in the comments. But as far as I can tell, the House Speaker was previously Nancy Pelosi.
Yep.
They end up having a lot of power to choose what's discussed within the not the Senate, but the House of Representatives, how things are structured and how discussions are structured, and a lot of power in that sense. And it was all because Newt Gingrich in 1994 made a lot of changes to make it so that he could just be a lot more partisan in the House.
And as I understand it, if the president and vice president both are killed in some way,
Speaker is next in line.
Yeah.
Third in line after
Yeah.
After the vice president. As
so
you
it's
said.
got to be fairly important.
Oh, it's a very, very important position to hold. And now we've got Kevin McCarthy, because as I said, after about 15 rounds of voting, they finally managed to get it so that he got the majority of the votes that they needed, which, given that it wasn't the red wave that people were expecting in the midterms, was mainly down to the fact that the Republicans just didn't have as many people on their side as they expected to. But it might have come down to a lot of voting anyway, because the voting process seems to be a process of a lot of negotiation. And the Republicans who were anti-McCarthy Republicans, that being the American First...
The MAGA types.
Yeah, the MAGA types, the anti-establishment rhinos, have managed to negotiate their way into getting quite a few concessions out of him that you wouldn't expect otherwise, to the point where it's essentially ended up that he's got a loaded gun to his head at all times if he doesn't do things that the MAGA Republicans want him to do.
Kind of how I like my politicians.
Yeah, that's how they should be treated, because Kevin McCarthy, as far as I can tell, metaphorically speaking, of course, not saying anything legit,
Yeah.
but he seemed, as far as I could tell from just looking into him, to be quite a standard, business as usual. Let's vote to increase military budget. Let's vote for more foreign wars. That kind of Republican.
Part of the Uniparty.
Yeah, definitely part of the Uniparty. But he did come out back in the day for Trump, and I think a lot of the MAGA America First types really despise Kevin McCarthy, because
I could see that.
Yeah, he ended up being, after Trump was ousted, after Jan 6 and all such things, he came out and was very flip-floppy on Trump, didn't have a strict opinion, and also from his previous tenure as Speaker, a lot of people like the Pedro Gonzalez Chronicles types don't like him, don't like how he governs, don't like how he was arranging and using his position as Speaker, especially because, for reasons that we'll continue to get into. But first, the promo that we've got for today, I wanted to point everybody once again to Dan's new excellent series, Brokenomics, where he's talking about inflation. I think the next episode of this is coming out tomorrow. I don't know exactly what he's talking about, but he's just him explaining the economic system that we live under at the moment and how it's screwing us all over. And if you really want a seal of approval for this, if you could scroll down for me, John, into the comments, we can see the best review possible down here. Here we go. Yes, Megafauna Woman says, I like this. It's explained simply enough for even a woman to understand. So if that's not enough of a seal of approval that even a woman can understand this economic series, then go straight ahead. That's for premium subscribers. The first episode is freemium. So if you really enjoy that one, you could subscribe for as little as £5 a month and get access to all this excellent stuff.
So just as a quick side, I know nothing about economics, and I've been watching this with close, rapt interest, because frankly, Dan can actually explain it in a way that literally I understand it. So,
women
he's doing a good
and
job.
cavemen can understand economics with this series.
Yeah.
Therefore, you should watch it. It's really, really useful and will continue to be useful for the foreseeable future.
Yes.
Sadly, as much as I wish that wasn't the case. But anyway, so like I said, Chronicles, those sorts of magazines, the very patriot, paleo-conservative style magazines are talking about Kevin McCarthy previously, and this was around the midterms, his war against MAGA, explaining why it is that McCarthy is not exactly the sort of person that you want on your side, because alongside people like Mitch McConnell, who spent a lot of money to keep America First candidates out of office, according to the Washington Post, McCarthy also directed millions to be spent against Republican candidates. This is in the previous article, John, if you want to just stay on that, thank you. the political machine around McCarthy directed millions to be spent against Republican candidates in GOP primaries associated with the America First movement. So this is McCarthy surrogates, which include Amazon lobbyists like Jeff Miller, it says, directed 4 political action committees to attack key candidates to McCarthy's right in primary elections around the country. And this is one of the big problems with just the establishment GOP. If anything is remotely actually traditionally right-wing or traditionalist or conservative, they're like, no. Can't be having any of that. What will AOC think if we go ahead with moves like this? That kind of attitude that we get. And here are a few examples listed in this article. I just want to note as well, this article was written by one of the people that McCarthy himself prevented from getting funding for his campaign. So there might be a little bit of bitterness in this article.
Understandably so.
Reasonably so, yeah.
The effective people in the Republican Party, and McCarthy's like, we'll fund against them.
Yeah, we just want... Well, how are we going to send more money to Israel otherwise? That kind of attitude. Zelensky will miss a check if we get some of the America First in.
I don't want my Zelensky being homeless.
But so some of the examples, $1.7 million against Freedom Caucus member Madison Cawthorn, $2 million against Joe Kent, $2 million to prop up Kent's primary opponent, $1.5 million spent against Carl Palladino in New York, $1 million against Christian Collison in Texas, and there's a bunch of other examples here, just showing that these people are snakes. They are politicians to the core, not the sort of people that have principles or ideals that they want to hold the country to, just people who want to, in a very Machiavellian way, maintain maintain their position within the political structure. Because one of the ulterior motives for propping up all of these sorts of people against the Freedom Caucus types is because in this round of voting, the Freedom Caucus types were not happy with McCarthy and were the ones holding out on votes for him to get the speakership.
This is so obviously what you call like the deep state, the neo-lib establishment, trying to maintain control of the Republican Party against a very powerfully insurgent populist movement. That's what this is.
And thankfully, despite the fact that, the red wave didn't happen, or at least not to the extent that anybody was hoping it for, and because these people were blocked, there were still enough people within the Freedom Caucus MAGA movement to be able to block him getting the speakership by just voting present rather than in favour of him, to be able to negotiate some terms that they were happy with, which led to some conflicts, I will say. So if we move along to the next article. This was a lot of people getting very angry. McCarthy was confronting Matt Gaetz in a chaotic scene. Matt Gaetz did, as a troll, as a bit of a meme, suggest that they should nominate Donald Trump to be Speaker of the House instead. Sadly, there were no votes for him, but oh well. McCarthy was on the verge of becoming the next Speaker of the House on a ballot before he ultimately clinched the role, but was left one vote short when old foe Representative Matt Gaetz derailed his chances by voting present. And this was in the 14th one. I know, and this was after almost a week straight of doing it as well. So I can understand that tensions would be running high. Gaetz
I like Gaetz because he's sticking to his guns here.
He really is.
Like, McCarthy isn't the guy that he wants, and he shouldn't endorse him.
Shouldn't be forced to do it. You can't just if we just get rid of the radicals and all just get on with business as usual. No. Nobody wants business as usual. Yeah. Business as usual is impoverishing everybody. It's letting the immigrants across the borders in record numbers, causing the southern border crisis. It's causing lots of problems.
It's building Zelensky more mansions,
Yes. Excuse me, my throat's not feeling that great today, so if I'm a bit croaky, apologies.
And going around.
Yeah, so it led to a stunning scene on the House floor as McCarthy slowly walked up the gallery steps to confront the Florida lawmaker with an icy stare. There was a bit more going on than just an icy stare as well. The two peoples, they spoke animatedly for a minute with lawmakers huddled around them, so this is all the negotiations going on. McCarthy walked away in disgust, approached him again.
Get that picture up, John, just while
you can see the fingers pointing here.
Excellent.
Very excellent. And McCarthy flipped. He did manage to flip by the end of the 15th round. 15 previous GOP holdout votes following the 13th ballot, leaving Andy Biggs of Arizona, Lauren Boebert, Matt Gaetz, Eli Crane of Arizona, Bob Good of Virginia, and Matt Rosendale of Montana as the remaining GOP opposition to his speakership. So he managed to negotiate terms to the point where he just clinched the majority to be able to get it. The Democrats, they were all just voting as one big block for their candidate, but they didn't have the majority to be able to get them in the first place. And then one of the other scenes that came out of this was where Representative Mike Rogers had to be restrained from going after Gaetz on the House floor after his present vote on the 14th round. And scroll down so we can see some more. This is how politics should be done.
Well, this is how politics is done in most other countries, to be honest.
Exactly. This is just honest politics. If tempers aren't rising to the point that fists are about to fly, then you're not doing politics right. If you're
That's the thing. This is how you know the sort of like America First caucus is actually challenging the power, right? They're actually doing something that is going to affect the way things work in America. Unlike all of the rhinos who are like, you're going to overthrow our pensions or whatever. Like, no. Get held back, bitch.
Yeah, and Dan Crenshaw was photographed with some blood on his knuckles as well, potentially from punching a wall. This is unconfirmed, but I did see an amusing edit that I should have put in here, actually. I did see an amusing...
Dan Crenshaw.
I know, somebody had lovingly photoshopped a little eye patch.
Yeah,
over the bruise where it was on his knuckle.
Punching walls going, how am I going to answer to Klaus Schwab now?
Yeah, and then he did appear on Fox News as well, very angry, quite petulant, where he was like, I can't believe that 20 radicals are just...
Well, he looked like he was about to cry.
Yeah, 20 rogues are holding back the system. This isn't what the founding fathers wanted. Yes, it is.
That's exactly what they wanted.
It is. Yeah. Just read the Federalist Papers. It's right there.
Yeah, that's exactly right. That's precisely.
And once again, in the process of all of this, Pedro Gonzalez, who is a very good guy, very good boy, support him and all his work he does on Substack and Chronicles and such. He was on his Substack just talking about how this is sending a message. Just send a message. This is while it was all still going down. But he points to some other reasons why McCarthy and the establishment types aren't people you want on your side, especially if you want a unified, a wholesome America, where he's talking about Bob Good argued that no one was defending McCarthy on merit because no one can. When McCarthy was the last majority leader, every single major spending bill he negotiated that helped pass was done with a majority of Democrat votes and a minority of Republican votes. Okay, there you go. And despite GOP control of the state, of the House, Gonzalez goes on to confirm this, and then he just says, well, look at some of the key incoming House committee chairmen who are more aligned with Democrats than Republicans, which is another legacy of McCarthy's leadership. And he quotes Daniel Horowitz at the Blaze, who gave people a liberty score, telling them, how American these people are.
How American lawmakers are.
Yeah,
genuinely a question these days.
Yeah, he just lists some. So, starting with Energy and Commerce Committee is considered one of the most powerful committees in economic and domestic policy. One would expect the rising chairman to be the most articulate foe of the global warming and green energy agenda. Instead, Kathy McMorris Rogers, who has a 60% liberty score, that's not very high, is the quintessential fusionist who likes to validate the global warming agenda and the need for green energy while merely opposing the most extreme measures of transitioning too quick.
These are literally the doomed to lose conservatives in America.
Yeah, that's just a bit too fast right now, isn't it? They're the sorts who go, well, we'll consider that in a year. Yeah. You want to destroy all...
Obviously, I'm for trans and kids, but am I in favour of pedos, adopting them? Not yet.
Ask me 5 years from now, and then we can have that discussion.
Yeah.
So he just lists a bunch of examples of those sorts of people. But then, if we go to the next one, after the votes were all done, Andy Biggs, one of the people who opposed him, had some words to say about this and how they've basically positioned McCarthy in a way that could be beneficial for them in, like I say, loaded gun to the head manner. So he led the opposition to McCarthy, recipient of some defector votes during the 15 ballot voting series, because he was positioned as a potential opponent to him. He just didn't have the support for doing it, and he didn't get the nomination back in November when they were seeing who the prime nominee would be for the Republicans. He said, earlier this morning, Kevin McCarthy was elected as Speaker of the US House of Representatives for the 118th Congress. It is important that he be successful, and I wish him success in fighting the Democrats and advancing the Republican agenda. He's shown a new willingness to empower the people of the country, and I will be watching closely to see if he stays true to his words. For months, I led an effort to elect a House Speaker that would change the status quo and advance America First principles. I challenged McCarthy for House Speaker in multiple ballots, nominated several individuals who I thought could serve as viable alternative Speaker candidates, and stayed true to my word that I would not vote for him. On the 15th ballot, it became clear that he had the votes, and blah, 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 blah. And then he said the very first Congress bill, as a result of all the negotiations that they've gone through, will be to repeal the funding for the 87,000 new IRS agents.
Okay.
That's all right.
Something.
And one of the first hearings will be on the crisis on the southern border. He also announced the reopening of the Capitol complex to the public, which has been closed since the beginning of COVID-19, and since then boarded up and with fences and such. So now we can all go to the birthplace of democracy, the event, the magnificent, well, not the magnificent event. No, I'm just going to stop there. Anyway, like I said, I'm sorry, I was tripping up over myself then a bit. And in the next one, on Tucker Carlson, Representative Thomas Massey told him that a new church committee will be happening, and this church committee will be to investigate the involvement of the alphabet agencies with massive social influence, social media agencies, companies, that and what influence they had on influencing and manipulating the public and leading up to particular events.
Isn't it interesting how we just have a massive dump of information about all of that from Elon Musk?
It is very interesting, and it seems that information will be very useful in these committees and what will be looked into. And then I got more information on some of the other things that were decided upon. So this one, the new package that has been agreed to gain him the results, to gain him the winning result, was rules on allowing a single member of the House of Representatives. It used to be you would need a lot, then he got it down to 5, and now it's down to a single member to force a motion to vacate the speakership, which could threaten McCarthy's already tenuous position.
Okay.
So just if he does anything that even a single America First MAGA representative is like, no, he can just go, get lost.
Okay, fair enough.
Just, you're fired. So he's being held to ransom, appropriately so.
Yeah.
And the package also includes reinstating a provision to allow lawmakers to propose amendments to appropriations bills, adds a 72-hour window for members to read bills before they vote. Can you believe we've only just gotten to this level?
Yeah, I know.
Where it's 72 hours. We just need 3 days.
It's mental, because some of these are literally thousands of pages long.
I know the Inflation Reduction Bill was something like 1,500 pages long, something like that, because they just use it to sneak in all sorts of provisions for whatever they want. The only people who actually know what are in those bills are the lawyers who write them up in the first place.
They should have them as one page. It should be a law, 1 page. That's the length you've got for your bill.
I think that was the Ron Paul provision that he wanted to get put through. Just like, it's 1 page, you have to read it before you vote on it, and all of the...
That's not unreasonable in any way, shape, or form.
At the time, all the rest of the House of Representatives were like, read the laws we're going to pass into motion.
Page, Ron?
Good
I don't think so.
You libertarian maniac.
Yeah, exactly.
And also, we've got a commitment to vote on legislation of term limits for members of Congress. And he also is said to be giving MAGA members senior positions on the Powerful Rules Committee, which just determines the rules that all of the committees have to operate by. And also decides on the bills the House's debates. So, McCarthy is not the ideal person to have as Speaker. He is certainly not anybody that I would have voted for if I were American or in that situation. But it seems in the process of these 15 rounds of voting, they have at least got some good concessions out of him.
What this is showing is that the MAGA Republicans are actually effective. I mean, this is what the squad wished they could have done with Nancy Pelosi, right?
Yeah, the squad just got whipped straight into line.
Exactly. You know, I recall seeing clips of AOC saying, well, Pelosi shouldn't be Speaker. You know, I wouldn't vote for her. And then the second that came to the crunch, she just completely fell into line. And in fact, I think it was... why can't I remember his name? We literally just saw the... What was the article by what's-his-face?
What, Pedro?
Pedro, that's it. Yeah, sorry, Pedro. I can't... right, I'm sure I saw Pedro saying how there's essentially a kind of round-robin arrangement within the squad where they'll all vote in line with whatever it is Pelosi was whipping them to do, except for the one person who could say, no, I'm voting against this because I'm morally pure, and then the rest would just shut their mouths.
Wasn't there footage of AOC literally crying after she signed up and voted in favour of a bill to keep sending money to Israel?
Yeah.
Despite her well-documented remarks against Israel.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, every time, like, a different one gets to be the person who's, like, the conscientious objector to the imperial regime that the Democrats are running. And so it's just interesting how, like, they're completely whipped by the Democrat machine, whereas the MAGA Republicans are just thrashing things. But don't worry about that, John, because we'll come to that.
Yeah,
But
the MAGA Republicans are literally willing to take a punch to the face if
Yeah.
it comes to it, to stand by what they believe in. I
Absolutely.
respect it. I
do
respect it massively.
You know, so good for the MAGA Republicans for actually getting some results.
If you appreciated that segment from the podcast of the Lotus Eaters, you can go to lotuseaters.com to get access to all the premium content we have on the site, such as the Epoch series we do, this one on the Battle of Kursk Part 2. If you'd like to find out what else we're putting out, you can follow us on Getter at lotuseaters_com on Getter. Thank you and goodbye.